crucial area in Mr. Floyd. So this here is where the hypopharynx is located on your surface anatomy.
So why is the hypopharynx important for understanding this case? What happened?
The hypopharynx is very important for understanding this case for a number of reasons, because it's so vulnerable, because it has no cartilage around it. It's going to be an area that is compressed. It's extremely small to breathe through, and it becomes very important for being able to continue to breathe through.
Doctor, I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 935 and 937. Could you identify, just for the record, tell us what's depicted?
Yes, I'm looking at 937, which is the hypopharynx.
And then 935. And 935, which
I'm looking at 935, which is the hypopharynx with a coin.
And do these two images fairly and accurately depict the hypopharynx?
They do.
Your Honor, all for State's Exhibit 935 and 937.
935 and 937 are received.
We can show them to the jury. So, Doctor, using Exhibits 937 and 935, could you help us to better understand what the hypopharynx is and what it does?
Right. So what you're looking at here, I don't know if this works. Yeah, it does. So here at where I've drawn in red is the top of your tongue. Okay, that's the tongue there, and then above it is an empty space, and then above that is the top of the hard palate. So that orientates you there. And say then the tongue comes down along here, and the critical structure in this case, because the act of speech in Mr. Floyd becomes very important, how he was able to speak and all these different things. So the structure that gives his speech are the vocal cords right here. And they're in the voice box and in the larynx. And then we have a little area here called the epiglottis. It's a little sliver. And that comes back to prevent food going the wrong way when we're swallowing. Because we use the hypopharynx both for swallowing, for eating, and we use the hypopharynx for breathing. So when we're breathing, the air is going to come in through your nose or your mouth, go on down through the hypopharynx, then through the vocal cords and into the windpipe, into the trachea, and go on down into the lungs. Whereas when you're swallowing, that trapdoor of the epiglottis will prevent the food going into the air passages and will direct it into the food tube at the back of the esophagus. The area of the hypopharynx then is exactly from the base of the epiglottis, the first yellow arrow, down to the second yellow arrow, which is the larynx. And it's just that little area that is the size of the hypopharynx.
So we see 935, right?
And so we know that the cross-sectional area of the hypopharynx in adult people, I have it here in the millimeters, 199 to 303, which are obviously difficult to remember, those type of millimeters. But in fact, right in the middle of this would be the size of a dime. So a dime is basically the size of the hypopharynx, and it tells you how small and how vulnerable is this area. So if it's going to be decreased, it's a very tiny area.
And so why is the hypopharynx in the case of Mr. Floyd?
Because the hypopharynx is going to be the area that will be vulnerable to occlusion from the knee on the neck. But in addition, the hypopharynx has another aspect, and that is the hypopharynx is also controlled by the size of your lungs. As your lungs expand, you increase the size of the hypopharynx with every breath. And so there's a regulation of that that's going on.
Was Mr. Chauvin applying force or pressure to the hypopharynx of Mr. Floyd that you observed?
At different times. It varied from time to time.